be able to ask questions. And we got a presentation for you as well. But I want to thank you for taking the time out of your Saturday night. There's lots of things you could be doing and lots of places that you could be. And so thank you for spending it with us. And I think it would be entirely appropriate to start in a word of prayer. And so let's pray, and then I'll turn it over to boss number one and boss number two over here. Let me pray. Jesus, we give this time to you. And God, may our conversation, may our explanation just be acts of worship here today. And Father, we thank you for the freedom of being in this building, being in your house, and being together as a group, as a family in Christ. And God, we thank you so much for the opportunity to expand your kingdom and to claim new territory and to love on others and to simply display your love in just such a tangible, real way. And so, God, guide our conversation and our hearts tonight. In the name of Jesus, we pray. Amen.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Jerry, and I work closely with Dr. Tom Harrell. We run the organization together, which doesn't take much effort. Only takes time. Health Teams International first applied for recognition with Revenue Canada to become a registered charitable organization in 2021.
No,
Now I know that because I read the paper today.
it's 2001.
2001.
Yes,
Yes.
not 21.
Yeah.
Yes.
Much less recent.
And
Yes.
we got officially recognized in 2002. So we've been in business for over 20 years. We are a Christian organization comprised of volunteers who represent the medical, dental, and vision fields and the evangelism field. We have done, I think, 23 trips. About that time? Yeah. Pretty close. And I have done a few more with that because when I first started off, I worked with Health Teams International in the U.S. And we spun off the U.S. so that we could give out, or so we could issue tax receipts for donations. We were trying at one time to do 2 or 3 mission trips per year. But now we find that expenses are extremely high, income is kind of slow, so we've committed ourselves to 1 per year. Most recently, we had a project going in Cambodia, and we did 4 trips to Cambodia, established a wonderful family there, and we owe them 1 more trip. We promised 5 from the beginning, so that one is being held in abeyance now. We also had and have an ongoing project in Dominican Republic in Cabarete area, and we have been there 4 times, and that was extremely successful. So where is God going to lead us to next? We're not quite sure. He hasn't told us yet. But we're ready. We're ready when he is ready. I brought along some booklets like this and copies of the latest newsletter. I would give them to you now, but then you would just read them and you wouldn't pay any attention. So I'm not going to give them to you now. That's the teacher coming over here. So, huh? Michelle?
Me too.
Yep. So this has been my 6th trip with Help Teams International, and it's the first time that I've gone with my wife. Usually one or the other of us goes. My wife Michelle, I'm Scott. So yeah, this is our first trip into Egypt. It was a very fascinating place because Egypt holds a very important place in the Bible. Outside of Israel, it's the place that's most mentioned in the Bible. And when Moses was born, Egypt was already thousands of years old. So it has a great deal of history that you can actually touch. It's very cool to be there and be able to see all these statues and tombs and actually put your hands on things. It's not like our museums where you get in trouble if you do that. It is situated on the northeast corner of Africa, and it's connected to the Holy Land via the Sinai Peninsula, and it's actually on the same latitude as Miami.
I've been to Miami a few times. Egypt is much hotter than Miami.
Yeah. So we arrived on September 29th, and we've got some pictures here of our baggage. Here's our crew.
Maybe first we could introduce the team, because a lot of our team is here tonight. This was our team at the airport, minus Mimi and Muriel, because one was already there and Muriel joined us later. But if you were on the team, maybe you could stand up. So we have Dr. Tom Harrell and Jerry Rusi, my dad. They're the co-leaders of HTI. Dr. Rob Yell, Dr. Hugh Montgomery and his wife Maddie, and Marika Yell, and Patty Harrell's behind Marika, and Dr. Mahassan Gobriel behind, and Pastor Ben Last. And then we have Muriel Lawton, who wasn't able to join us tonight, as well as Hugh and Candace Chow from Calgary, a dentist, and his wife. So this was our crew before we left. You can see we're all kind of well rested.
So we had 21 bags plus our carry-ons of luggage. And we were blessed on the way down. We had some coupons, so some of us got to spend some time in the lounge with the luggage safely, but the rest of us had to slum it out in the main part of the airport. But it was nice because we were able to take 3 pieces of luggage, those people that had those special tickets. We arrived and all our luggage arrived with us. One of the things we were concerned about was getting into the country because we didn't really have the official nod to go. So sometimes you go under the covers and you pray that God will work things out. And he did. We arrived at the airport. This tall, handsome man showed up and took our passports from us. And he went away, came back, and a few minutes later he said, "Come with me." And we just walked out. No one looked at our luggage, no one asked us questions, no one did anything. We were just in and out. So that was definitely our first answer to prayer right there. We had a couple of days that we went sightseeing. So this is an area kind of on the outskirts of Cairo. These are all tombs, and people live on top of them. And you can see there's all kinds of mosques all over the place. You can see they're just everywhere. This is a picture over here. You would be the pyramids if it wasn't a bit hazy that day, but our groups.
From the top of the Citadel in Cairo, which dates back to the year 879 or 979.
This is us in front of the pyramids. They were very fantastic to see the pyramids. I was struck with the fact that I'm looking at these pyramids, and probably 2,000 years ago, Jesus was looking at these same pyramids. And him and his family were hiding out in Egypt. at night. The mosques are all lit up. It's very beautiful. There's also all kinds of interesting traffic things. You can see this truck loaded up with,
Oh my.
I think they were steel wire, kind of a little thicker than like chicken coop wire, but kind of that idea. But there was a lot of them.
Ben and Scott and I took turns sitting in front of the van or the bus, so we had this literally front row seat to the traffic in Cairo, which was often a very interesting experience. And Ben and I were commenting that, if we were on Highway 7 going to the lake in traffic like this, we would be terrified. But after the first day, it was like, oh, this isn't so bad.
So this was a church that we went to, a Coptic church, and you went down into the basement, and this is where supposedly Mary and Joseph and Jesus hid out when they were in Egypt or lived. So that was interesting to see. This is a picture of our hotel, Hotel Beirut. Maybe not the best name. Ben was wondering what year it was in fashion because the decor was a little dated, to say the least. We figure probably about 1970, it was in its heyday. Of course, it was much nicer accommodations than what people here in Garbage City have. So this is a place, it's basically like a slum settlement, and there's mountains of garbage. It has a population of about 80,000 people in an area of about 5.5 square kilometers. About 90% of them are poor Coptic Christians. And they go there, they actually go out, they collect garbage, they bring it back to their location, and they sort it. They have like a recycling rate of up to 80%, whereas here in Western society we have about 20 to 25%. And as you can see in this video, there's just tons of garbage coming in, and you can't really see it, but in all these buildings, even on the second and third floor, there's more garbage being put there to be sorted. So they actually go to the cities, pick it up, bring it back, and do all the recycling there. Anything else on Garbage City?
Just the structure on top of that building at the top was a pigeon home. Ben, you know a little more about the
Yeah, so they farm pigeons and they raise them and they eat pigeons, and so it's on the menu at restaurants as well, and it's also like a game. It's like a sport for them, and so at a certain time every night there's pigeon boxes all on these rooftops, and they will let their pigeons out, and they each have a call for their pigeons, and so they whistle a certain way and their pigeons come, and the goal is to steal other people's pigeons. And so at a certain time every night, all the pigeons go up in the air, they're all whistling, and they're trying to steal other people's pigeons to get them into the pigeon box, and then their coop gets bigger.
Did you eat some?
No.
Maybe.
Yeah, not that we know of.
There was some mystery meat we weren't sure about. So this is the location where we had our clinic set up, and it was a fairly nice setup for what we needed. We were able to all fit in here quite comfortably, and it was kind of gated off, so we were able to bring people in and kind of keep things under control.
It's hard to see later, we'll show you some other pictures, but the vision clinic was located in this little cutout of this building here. This was the waiting room. So outside over here, and then there was a set of stairs that you went up to go inside, and that's where our medical clinics and the pharmacy were located. And then dental was in this building behind that little shelter there. So we weren't exactly on top of each other, but we were close enough to communicate easily. We had lunch upstairs in here. There were a couple washrooms located in there, but for the 3 days that we were in Garbage City, this entire area here was full of kids running around. And adults, adults fighting over here, trying to get their place in line, singing, and lots of playing going on. It was just a really fascinating place to be for those 3 days. And you can tell by the playground that they're the kind of play structures that we might have had when we were kids. Like I can still feel going down that slide on a hot summer day. Right? You stick to it and burn your skin on the way down.
Like all steel.
All steel, yeah. And then a very dangerous merry-go-round because the kids would fly off and probably wouldn't fly over here. But it's what they had, and the kids were enjoying it, and they were having a lot of fun.
We also, the dental hygienist also would come and give presentations, and Southgate, I believe, he collected a number of toothbrushes, as did Community Life, and we handed them out here, and we came like this close to a riot. It was pretty dicey for a while, and so we learned not to go out with lots of product in our bag that people could see, because they're also anxious to get something.
So the ministry that we partnered with in Egypt was called Stephen's Children. And Stephen's Children actually has a chapter here in Ottawa as well. And while we were there was a couple who arrived from Orleans to see the facility and to see where the money that they had been raising was going towards, and what they had been doing with the money. But Stephen's Children was founded by a lady named Mama Maggie. Her name is Maggie Gobrin, I believe. She was a Coptic Christian lady who was persecuted for her faith. And in 1989, she was a professor at the American University of Cairo, I believe, in the Faculty of Economics. And in 1989, she left her affluent lifestyle and her career to devote her life to serving the poorest of the poor in Egypt and in Cairo, particularly in the garbage cities of Cairo. She was nominated for a Peace Prize in 2012 and another one in 2020. So this organization was who we had partnered with, and they provided our food and were tour guides and so on. So she's now known as the Mother Teresa of Egypt.
Their motto is, with faith and love, anything is possible. And you can certainly see the impact that they're having on especially the younger children there, but everybody, in fact. And there's a number of people that have come through their programs and are now serving other people now. So they continue to work with Stephen's Children's Ministries. So on our first 3 days of clinics, we saw 553 people, not counting all the many children that were part of the children's ministry and the outreach evangelism.
But just before we move on, the Coptic Christians it's the largest Christian denomination in Egypt, and by large, it's only 10 to 15% of the population. But their history is very old. It's as ancient as the Egyptian Muslims. You can tell the Coptic Christians because they all have tattoos, either on their hands or on their wrists. So the majority of the patients that we saw in Garbage City were from the Coptic Christian denomination. And you saw the video of Garbage City, you've seen a few pictures, but right up the street, literally up the street, is Cave Church. So Cave Church, there's a really interesting story behind it, but this sort of sanctuary area seats 20,000 people in this outdoor auditorium area, and the platform is at the bottom of the auditorium here, and then this picture over here is from the platform looking up and out. So it's really, really massive. So this beautiful, beautiful church just steps away from Garbage City. And all of the students in school in Garbage City actually attend services at Cave Church a number of times a week, so that was interesting. Right up the street from there is another church called St. Mark's Church. This is a picture of the inside of that, and it's also part of the rock. It seats another 2,000 people, and there are carvings in the wall of various New and Old Testament stories, and it also has a really interesting history and story behind it.
It's named after the Apostle Mark because it said that the Apostle Mark moved to Egypt after the Ascension and founded the church in Egypt.
It was interesting to hear how they built it because they weren't actually allowed to build the church. And so what they would do is, it's a big rock and they had to blast to remove all the rock to make room for the church. And so they would wait for the call to prayer in the morning, and when the speakers started going, they would blast. So they would use that to cover their blasting of the rock. And yeah, it's very impressive to see it.
So from Cairo, after our Garbage City clinics, we traveled to Aswan, which is a city about 570 kilometers south of Cairo. It was an overnight train ride. You can see sort of the size of the sleeper cabins there. Scott is 6'1", and he got to have the top bunk. They're very small. The only way to describe this train trip was that it was unforgettable. I don't know if our team members have any other words to describe it. Scott used the word horrible.
I'm only pretending to be sleeping there for the picture because none of us got any sleep.
Well, I think Marika and Rob got some, and then we told them to not talk about it anymore.
I was only allowed to mention it
Yeah.
once.
Drugs apparently help you sleep on the train.
Yeah, drugs helped me on my way back.
It was about a 13-hour train ride, so you really had to put up with a lot.
Yeah, it was rickety, it was loud, it was stop and start.
Yeah.
Cold. It was cold, at least it was air conditioned, but maybe a little too much.
When you flush the toilet, if you look down, it was just the tracks.
Flush. You had to clip on it with your foot, and then that would make everything go down. But we only had one, on the way down, we only had one toilet that worked for the whole car. On the way back, we had two luxurious bathrooms. So Aswan is a fascinating market city on the banks of the Nile, and actually about 95% of people in Egypt live along the banks of the Nile. So they're very, very close to the river. These pictures were taken from the rooftop of our guest house, which is associated with the Al Germania Hospital. So it's there, the organization that we partnered with in Aswan for the next 5 days. And it was a really, really beautiful spot. Want to tell us a bit about the Nile?
Sure. So, just like you learned back in geography class, if you can remember back then.
Or Bible class.
Or Bible class, yeah. So, in ancient times, the Nile River was Egypt's source of life. And it provided the area's only supply of water for both drinking and irrigation. At the end of the rainy season, the river would swell and flood the Nile Valley, and it would put nutrients out, and that was why the ground was so fertile close to the river. It doesn't flood so much anymore thanks to the construction of the high dam in the 1960s, but it's still a very important river to the people, and it provides the irrigation for farms and is a transportation route. It's the longest river in the world at 4,132 kilometers. It flows from south to north, passing through 10 countries before it empties into the Mediterranean. And today, actually, 95% of Egyptians live within just a few kilometers of the Nile, indicating how important it is even today.
If you hear the terms Upper Egypt and Lower Egypt, where would you think Upper Egypt is? You would think it's in the north, right? But it's because the Nile runs from south to north, Upper Egypt is in the south. So Upper Egypt is where we were in Aswan, and then Cairo is considered to be in Lower Egypt because it's closer to the Mediterranean.
So we did get a chance to take a few boat rides, and you know, as you're sailing along in the boat and you're looking at these bulrushes, you can't help but think of the story of Moses and weaving the basket and putting him on the Nile. You can imagine this beautiful river turning to blood once with one of the plagues, or with the flood of frogs that came out of it as one of the other plagues. It is very cool as well when you go swimming in it. It's about 16 to 17 degrees pretty much year round, so it's very refreshing when you hop in.
The air was 44 degrees, the water was around 17.
Yeah, and the current was very strong. So for the next 5 days, we served 2 different people's groups. So the first was the Nubians in Darwin.
Darao.
Darrell. So the Nubians in the Bible, they're referred to as Cushites, and Moses' wife was a Nubian.
Today they're a displaced people who, with the construction of the high dam, they were forced to move. So now they've sort of lost a lot of their culture and all over the place. They actually speak their own language that it doesn't seem that many people can learn how. They know how to speak it to each other, but not many other people know their language. They do speak fluent Arabic though, so it was Arabic that we were, we weren't. Our translators were working. Yes.
Yeah, almost everybody
all of
you would
them.
see in these.
This lady here, someone told me you can, I don't know if you can see it, but she has a dress on, but then over top of her dress, she has another dress. So it's almost like a lace covering, and that's very common for Nubian women. So it's sometimes hard to tell whether they were Muslim women or if they were Nubian women, but someone explained to me that that was one of the ways that you could tell.
What really religious background of Nubian people?
At one point, they were quite a number of Christians, but now they're almost all, I think like 90% or more are Muslims, or 99%. So it's been a radical shift from Christianity to Muslim. So the second group of people that we saw were Sudanese refugees. So as you know, Sudan has been engulfed in a terrible civil war. It's really heated up since mid-April. 2 warring generals, and they're just wreaking havoc on the country. And so many people have fled. Some of them have fled into Egypt. It was interesting to talk to the people that came through. You think of refugees, sometimes you think that, you know, maybe they're poor or maybe they had no other means other than try to escape, but we saw everybody. We saw professors from college, we saw, you know, businessmen. There's many people that were speaking like almost perfect English, and it just goes to show you that war is no discriminator of money or position. When it comes and you flee, you just leave everything behind, and what you have on your back is what you have. And so these people were coming, and they were very thankful for what little we could do for them, but it was quite a pleasure to be out just in the system.
So we're gonna let you hear from our individual team members. We have dental clinics, medical clinics, vision clinics, pharmacy, and kids ministry and evangelism. So I'm gonna ask the dental team to come
Sure.
up first.
So my name is Tom Harrell. I'm a local dentist and I've been associated with health teams since 2001, as Jerry has mentioned. Our team consisted of another dentist who was serving in Calgary. He runs a free clinic for the homeless in that city, and he's been on a couple of other trips with us to India and Cambodia. We had Maddie, who was our dental assistant. And we had Hewan's wife, who was also a dental assistant, and Muriel Lawton, who was our hygienist. So, George Bernard Shaw once said, "To the person with a toothache, even if the world is tottering, there is nothing more important than a visit to the dentist." And I'm sure anybody that's had that experience of a toothache, they want to get it fixed for sure. And that's one of the great things about dentistry in the mission field, is that you can actually do some real good for people that they notice right away. That it's acute curative care that makes a difference almost immediately in their lives. So the need for dental care is extremely high in the developing world, where over 90% of people do not have access to routine dental care. Many village health care centers in Egypt report that oral pain is among the 5 most frequent health complaints. So dentistry provides a practical display of God's love and of the concern of Christians serving in His name. Dental pain and disease can be a barrier to physical, mental, and spiritual well-being. Therefore, our dental ministry can be a remarkable, effective tool for using physical healing to open the door for spiritual healing. Many who will not listen to other missionaries will often be more willing to accept it from those providing the gospel message in a healthcare setting. So it's a very practical use of our skills. I just wanted to sort of maybe outline sort of our treatment philosophy and kind of how we set up the clinic on the mission field. Our philosophy is to basically take universal precautions. We assume everyone is a potentially source of disease and infection. Therefore, we use masks, gloves, protective clothing, eyewear, smocks, covering gowns. As I said, mentioned, we treat acute curative conditions, so caries, infections, poor hygiene. We don't really provide in that setting restorations as much as getting people out of pain by extracting abscess teeth. We try to provide dentistry to as many people as possible. So you could spend an hour just on one patient if you wanted to. There's that much need. But what we try to do is pick out situations or conditions that were causing them the most discomfort, and specifically zone in on that condition and get them comfortable right away. So you were able to see a fair number of people that way. When it came to children, we tried to treat the older children that maybe could cope with and manage having a tooth extracted over the younger ones, so they could sort of set the example and be able to model maybe good behavior in the dental chair. So we use a portable chair, a portable light, ultrasonic scalers, step-down transformer. In Egypt, the power source is 220, so the equipment that we bring over is usually 120 volt, so we have to bring a step-down transformer, so it would work. We have power suction, compressors, and of the 21 suitcases that Scott said that we brought over, 6 to 9 of them were just of dental supplies alone. In terms of crowd control, we use a host country gatekeeper, so someone from the host country would be able to screen people in terms of what their needs were in terms of dental, medical, vision, and then give them put their name on a list. We try to set expectations with respect to reasonable limits for patient loads per clinician. So for each dentist, they would probably be able to see 25 to 30 patients per day. Hygienist would be maybe 15 to 20. So we say this is what we can handle in a day. There were 2 dentists, so maybe 50 patients. But it didn't always stay that way. We'd end up seeing that many patients, but if there was still time left in the day, we could carry on and take more people. I think our busiest day, Kewan and I saw, just in terms of dental extractions, we saw 50 patients each, so 100 patients just pulling teeth all day. We tried not to under-promise. We tried to under-promise and over-deliver. We use number cards and sign-up lists rather than using open-ended lines. For record keeping, we have a small record book where we take their basic name, gender, their conditions that they're concerned about, what their medical status was, whether they had high blood pressure or they had diabetes. And then we come up with a diagnosis and a treatment plan, and then work down any complications or treatment that we provided and any medication that was provided. Sterilization, ideally you want to sterilize your equipment and your materials, but that's not always practical, so we try to go for high-level disinfection. And we used, often have to resort to hydrogen peroxide, phenol-based agents, butyraldehydes, and we'd soak them in the instrument baths for 10 to 15 minutes on a sort of cycle rotation basis. And that's where Maddie would be helping us out in the sterilization area. And then she'd help me when it came to doing some extractions, and we'd chisel away some bone and take some teeth out. We used chemical wipes to disinfect flat areas and trays, and we had a sharps container to put our used needles in. Communication with patients, we used a phrase list of keywords, such as open, your mouth closed, where's it hurt, things like that, using flashcards, having post-op surgical instruction handouts in Arabic, of course the use of translators, and then we'd often, even patients that were just coming to see Kewan and I, we'd hand out toothbrushes and toothpaste, and in certain situations you could hand out tracts and even pray with patients. So in terms of a personal reflection, it was amazing to actually see these patients that they were fully gowned, and you could only see sort of through their eye slits, and then they would take that off and you'd be able to treat them. It was just wonderful to be able to break down that stereotype and misconception about these people. They were just as normal and as loving and as caring for their kids as anybody else. It was wonderful to have that experience with these people. Of course, it teaches us resourcefulness in low-resource environments, what we have to do to make things work, sort of headlamps to get looking in the mouth, or as we did with not having dental drills, we'd use a little chisel and be able to break the bone down so we could grab onto the tooth better, things like that. Of course, that experience makes you more compassionate and empathetic towards others that you may serve at home. So it's good for your heart, it's tender, keeps your soul tender. And then, of course, you learn there are lots of good resources that we have access to, so we try to apply best practices in services that we provide. Great fun. We end up seeing about, the dental side, about 500 patients altogether in the 8 days of clinics.
Wow.
Thank you.
So, Kewan and Candace couldn't be with us, obviously. We offered to pick them up at the airport this afternoon, but they declined the offer. But I asked them to send some reflections on their part and how the chip affected them. So I'd just like to read to you what they sent me. So Candace said, my role in the team was to assist in the dental clinic with my husband, Kewan. I had no dental background, but was ready to assist where needed and also to help with the sterilization of the instruments. I had a great partner, Maddie, and together we managed to keep up with Dr. Tom, Dr. Kewan, and our hygienist, Muriel. I couldn't have asked for a better sterilization partner, Maddie. I felt really blessed to be working alongside such a wonderful group of people. In the dental clinic, I was grateful for all those who we were working with and the translators who helped us tremendously. Despite the chaos when initially setting up the clinic at Mama Maggie's, as a team, I felt we worked so well together. It was uplifting to see the clients we served be relieved of their dental pain. We take it for granted in first world countries that having a toothbrush is a basic tool of personal hygiene. I was quickly taught through the stories of our clients that this is absolutely not the case in the area we served. We quickly discovered that some families have never had a toothbrush. It made me realize that such a simple thing to us could potentially have some impact on their life, whether it be through that simple gift of a toothbrush, helping them overcome pain, or just our presence to show our love for others through service as Jesus calls us to do. I hope a seed of hope was planted. I was also struck by a young girl who attended the dental clinic 2 days in a row in Doral as support for her grandmother and mother, who were both very anxious and scared to have their teeth extracted. She had a beautiful smile and calmness. Although we did not treat her personally, I felt that she was listening and absorbing what we collectively were doing there. Through all of the clinic experiences, I was also thankful for all the activities we were able to do to see Egypt's history. Besides the astonishing historical sites, I was extremely impressed with the cave church and encouraged that despite being such a minority religion, the Christians in Egypt are able to worship in such a beautiful church inside Garbage City. And Dr. Kewen says, my trip to Egypt was amazing for many reasons. Treating the Egyptian patients was such a privilege because at first I didn't know how much we could talk about God, but when I treated patients who were scared, we prayed to Jesus to help me to do a painless extraction, and they really seemed to calm down once I prayed. This lady who gave a peace sign in the photo that we put up earlier,
Yes.
when is it? It was the one where he was dressed all in orange and she had the peace sign. Was my last patient of the day. She was so scared she was crying. However, once I prayed with her, she settled down and was happy once we had extracted the tooth. The next time we came back, I saw her again and she was so brave with not a tear. I could really see God at work in their lives. It was again amazing to work with translators that were so enthusiastic about helping us and so excited to help us take people out of pain and suffering. Working with the Sudanese refugees was also very rewarding, seeing war-torn refugees that were quite educated, speaking English, and many of them with post-secondary degrees in teaching and engineering, just trying to escape the dangers of war. At first, we were trying to decide whether to reset all of our dental stations back in as one, but God led us to do so, and what a blessing it was for both the dentists and the patients. Such a rewarding experience both ways, with many thankful patients and dentists alike, because logistics worked out so well. It was interesting to learn about the Coptic Christians and how they live the religion, not just it being part of their lives like it is in Western culture. The wrist tattoos are for letting people know if they're Christian or Muslim when they die and say are floating down the Nile River and need to be buried in a Christian or Muslim way.
So my name's Robert Yell, and I've been working in the Canada area for 20 years now. This would be my 9th missions trip, second time with Health Teams International. It's a real pleasure to work with Health Teams International. They're quite well organized, and so the logistics go very well. And from a medical perspective, I also appreciate that they take care to keep a copy of the records. So it's a good organization. I guess apparently it started in the United States in 1979 and then Canada in 2001. We partnered, as you've heard, with Mama Maggie's organization, St. Stephen's. Very wonderful to be able to partner with a local organization. Partnering with the local organization, it's what we would call asset-based missions. So we're building on what's working in the community. And so rather than us coming in as a savior team, we're going in and we're supporting people who are working full-time and giving their whole heart and soul to try to serve the populace. There's a book circulating around here that was published about 4 years ago. So Mama Maggie was she grew up in a Coptic Christian home. She had an aunt who would once a week go to Garbage City in order to serve the poor, so had a heart for serving the poor. And when she was 35, her aunt passed away. Yes, the book is just circulating. When she was 35, her aunt passed away, and then she felt a calling to continue this work because people had relied on her aunt to go there. And then apparently about 5 years into it, she felt that she needed to leave her business job and work full time. She was able, having worked in the organization, I can see how her business skills were then used in this organization. It's an organization that runs over 100 different schools and supports different medical work and whatnot throughout the city. And so it's very well organized, very well respected. So just seeing how this person had given her life to this was wonderful. So another thing about the organization, Garbage City. Garbage City, apparently there's 6 garbage cities in the city of Cairo. The history of the garbage cities had to do when there were some persecutions of Christians where the Islamic people would gang up on the Christians and force them off their lands, so that people who were then working and farming were actively kicked off their lands and had to go somewhere. So a large number of these people were not legally evicted, but just evicted from a kind of a religious bullying. And the population quite dense. There's a typical apartment floor. There would be 4 rooms. One room would be a toilet room, and then the other one, there would be 3 rooms where a family would each live in a room. A family, about 8 people to a family in each of the rooms. The rooms are, I believe, about 13 by 13, maybe 20 by 20, but it's 8 people living there. Now the interesting thing is they work from home. So working from home means that each of these apartments, most of the furniture are garbage bags. So they take the garbage, they go through the garbage in order to find recycling valuables, but they also use it as their tables, they use it as their beds, and it's an unfortunate situation. The statistics in Egypt as a country is the average individual would make $270 US a year. So a toothbrush, a 50-cent toothbrush is quite valuable if we're talking that's nearly a day's wage per person. I think the statistic is per person, not per family, so you have to multiply by 8, but this is the population that we served. So the actual clinic. So there are 3 doctors from Canada, and they were, through the course of our clinics, probably about 8 young doctors or medical students that were supporting us. So the organization was able to provide the local doctors in order to make it legal for us to serve, which was wonderful. So Hugh Montgomery is an emergency room doctor, and who was able to serve with us. Mimi Cobral, she's a pediatrician who was serving with us as well, and then I'm a family physician, and so we divided the teams, and we each had our own translator. Most of the translators, not all of them, but most of them were either medical students or young doctors. A lot of the different treatments we saw were remarkably similar to what you would see in Canada, just the difference being that people had problems but didn't necessarily have the resources to buy the medications that they needed. Cairo was a bit of a different experience than Aswan because the University of Cairo is quite present. So a lot of people were able to formally go and get assessments, but the problem is they didn't necessarily have the resources, and they didn't necessarily understand how to integrate their health. So it was very useful to be able to assist them with that. At the medical clinic, there was a pharmacist that worked 2 years in Canada. So she's an Egyptian pharmacist who worked in Vancouver for 2 years, and she was extremely helpful. I think God was very good to us there because was able to answer our questions when we didn't quite know the Egyptian equivalent to what we would give in Canada for the different problems. So that was a real blessing. Many of the volunteers, the organization St. Stephen's has been around in Garbage City for 35 years now, roughly. And a good number of the volunteers are people who grew up in the program. So there are people whose heart and soul were into serving the children. And so that was a real joy. One specific story that was very different than my experience in Canada. There was a woman who was 39, a mother of 4, and when she came in, she had fairly typical symptoms, and it led to the fact that she had a kidney infection, and she started crying. And you know, when I was trying to tell her, I said, well, it's a kidney infection, and with the antibiotics, it should get better. But she was crying because she wanted to donate her kidney in order to be able to get $2,000, which would then help support her family. And live in a situation, where we're living in people whose basic needs are in question, that they would donate their kidneys to a stranger. Yeah, it was very, very touching. We were able to spend some time a little bit to talk about how that would be essentially sacrificing her life, given her general health. She said she would do it for her children. So, I hope and pray that she wouldn't, because I think with her kids who were with her, appreciated that. The church was a very nice blessing as well, to be able to visit that. The Coptic Christians, what's interesting is, I guess we have it in Canada too, where people are cultural Christians. But many of the Coptic Christians, they'll walk around with a tattoo, but they actually don't know that Jesus died for them and that they could ask for forgiveness. And it's amazing how many times that I heard the workers being able to share with the local people to say, that tattoo that you have, it's more than just an identification tattoo. It also is a symbol for the fact that you can be forgiven. And so that was wonderful. The organization on a whole focuses on forgiveness. And Mama Maggie, one of her ways that she tries to get to the heart of serving the poor in Cairo is that many people who might have been taken advantage of as children, not had enough food, these sort of things, had the potential for a lot of bitterness and a lot of hatred. And she gets to the chase, sits down with them and says, I'm not the one who wronged you, but I'm going to sit here in the stead, sit in the place of the people who wronged you, and I ask you to forgive them. And that's the platform from which she starts. And the people that I volunteered with us, they were not filled with hatred, and they were filled with love and compassion. And it was a real testament to the love that was able to be shared through the organization. So the second part of our trip, we went to the southern part of Europe, of Egypt. I apologize, the right letter wrong. So Aswan was a very different. It was a different population because there were more Muslims that we were serving, as opposed to in Cairo, it was a mixture of Christians and Muslims. But nevertheless, it was a wonderful experience. In Egypt, it's considered illegal to evangelize. So to be able to openly share Christ's love is not allowed. One of some special moments that I had while I was there was to see one of the local women who works at the hospital, at the German hospital in the south, who she would, with her loud voice, 100 people in the waiting room, and say, I need the Christians to come over here, because I need to tell you what the tattoos mean. And then she would speak to the Christians and tell what the tattoos meant. There might have been about 30 Christians, but there were 70 Muslims who were listening to the story. And it was wonderful to see that she was able to abide by the laws, but yet be able to see the love or the story of Christ that we share. So in the south of Aswan, there were a different group of medical students that were with us, but one of the medical students that we worked with, we got to know quite well. But she, when I had mentioned, I wanted to know if the statistic was true about 270 US a year. because they're all very well dressed and they're clean and they're tidy. So it seemed like there's a bit of a disconnect. Her answer was, well, my father's a PhD researcher and he gets 200 US a year. So I think 270 is probably a little bit overinflated. So, yeah, so that was certainly very interesting. So in Doral, also known as Draw City, we were able to meet, some of the local Muslims, and it was a good experience. We got to know some of the medical students there as well. There was some reference to the Sudanese people. So we did spend a day at the hospital, and that was very special to be able to, to see the refugees, and it was Ben that had highlighted to us that I'd never thought of the fact that Jesus and his parents were refugees, and so as we were serving them, that was certainly very, very special. Egypt is a very welcoming country, so to be able to see that they are welcoming the Sudanese people was very nice, very, very heartwarming to be able to do that. So it was a real pleasure. I think Mimi has a story to share. Did you have a story to share?
I've been with HTI since 2005. We've been going different places all over the world, but this was, of course, the first time we go to Egypt. And when we didn't go for 3 years during COVID, and then one day Jerry phoned me to say we'll start going again, and we want to go to Egypt this time. I said, oh my, well, I don't know where to start. I left Egypt in 1965, so it's about, I've been away about 60 years or so. But all my family is in Toronto, but I have one brother in Egypt. So I started even first thing just to choose the locations where we can work. There were many, many locations that were suggested by people around me and so on. And thank God that the two locations we chose were very, very helpful, like very successful, and worked very well with us. I was the only one, of course, that did not need a translator there, but the thing is, in every country we go, we have to have our license, and we have to get a special permission from the government, legal permission that we are foreigners coming to work, and this is our license. Like once one dentist retired, he's still a very, very good dentist, but didn't have his license, so he couldn't come with us as a dentist. He can come and help. But in Egypt, you told me, do not apply for a license or for a permit, because they're going to refuse you in Egypt. Well, what if we go without the permit, and there is a lot of Muslim foreigners there, and they see a group of foreigners, they're going to say, who are you, what are you doing, where is your permit, no permit, get out. Which happened, I went with another organization on a trip to Egypt. They were mostly from the States, and this happened to us once, so this was very scary. So they decided, they said, when you come with every clinic, you need with every person, you need a translator. So we're going to provide, and we'll try to provide a physician with a physician as a translator, and a dentist with a dentist, and so on. But they were not sure that they were going to be able to find people enough to cover. But we were really searching. Even I went 2 weeks before they arrived. I was recruiting and trying to get more translators. I was able to get a pharmacist to help us, and a young resident physician, which she was only the one. She worked with me, but if they would come to campus, well, there's one physician for 3 doctors that are working in this one. And thank God nobody came to check on us with it. But this was one of the big worries which I had on the come. Besides, of course, coming through the customs in the airport with so many suitcases, especially a group of foreigners. Who are you? What is all this? equipment or whatever. So he said, when you see what this a group of tourists, don't mention your doctors, and hopefully they will want, like, had to get some special people to come through the customs and so on. But in my clinic, it's the same like any other country. When the parents come with their kids, it's the same usual complaint. They're not eating, they're not gaining weight, they're small for their age, they have tummy ache, the usual complaint you hear. And there it's so common, they get their kids money and they can't afford to buy food, but all the kids buy Pepsi and candy. Everybody has money for, must be very cheap, the candy and the Pepsi. And of course, if the child asks some price, they're not gonna resist that, so they're always gonna do that. So I took when they come for small questions, I check the child from head to toe, and then I say he's healthy. They say, oh, and I show them the growth chart. Not all kids the same age can be the same size, and this and that. And then we start talking about the diet, healthy diet, nutrition, you have to have routines and this and that. So I start saying, like in other countries, I would tell the translator that, and the translator knows my story, and she just gives the whole thing for every patient who will come. But I was talking to that person. But then when I tell them you have to get meat, chicken, and rice, well, they can't afford it. They don't buy meat or chicken, especially lately. The economy in Egypt is really severely coming down. Like I was in Egypt last, it's here, and the American dollar would be equal to 18 Egyptian pounds. Well, when we went this time, we changed it for 39 each $1. And now after the war in Israel, it's 40. So this means that the pound is not too much. And the middle class, there's so many classes. There's extremely rich and middle class and upper class that will have trouble just to make ends meet or just survive. But in Garbage City, it's 90% or more Christians. They used to have a lot of pigs, and this was because the meat from the pigs, in Egypt the Muslims do not eat pigs. And that's why nobody went near to live near Garbage City, because there were so many pigs there. Only a few years ago, there seemed to be, they said there's a virus which is in the pigs. And they went and slaughtered all the pigs from Garbage City, which was the big loss for the economy, for the business, besides sorting the garbage, of course, and all that. But, in Aswan, like we said, it was a majority Muslim people, but there were some Christians there, and with the Muslims just give them advice of their lifestyle. So with the Christians, I was so pleased to see some Christians, and then we started talking about going to church with them, teaching their kids, just basic, simple things to help them think of the importance of what to teach their kids before they grow, and then they are before they're not anymore. But thank God that everything went very well, and all the worries we had in the beginning after that was so God was with us in every step, and it
That's
went
right.
very well.
Thank you.
Patty or Marika, would you like to talk about pharmacy for a minute?
Just while Patty gets up there and Ricky gets up there, one thing that I really liked about the trip was that we bought the medications that we were able to hand out in Egypt. So the cost of the medication was much lower than if we were to have taken it elsewhere, and then also the leftovers, because it was all Egyptian medications, we were able to then pass it on to the hospital when we left. So, and I think maybe had some family members that might have helped with that.
So for getting our medication, then it really, you know, we would have had a lot more baggage for getting our medications over. And we did have a pharmacist that would help us in each location as far as talking. But they did teach Marika some phrases, which when she's giving out the medication, she could say.
Bi'alak means before eating, because a lot of the medication would be before eating. And then there were some other words that would be like if you were giving a child syrup, you could give them either a big spoon or a little spoon. So different things to kind of help them with the dosing. My Arabic is not very good, and everyone would laugh at my pronunciations, but I definitely tried my best.
Yeah. She did a great job, and I think one of the highlights, like sometimes people are talking about serving people and whatever, but one of the highlights was, for me, was working with Marika, because Marika would like to become a pediatric physician, and so you could see her gifting and why that would be just a source of work that would be great for her. When all of the little kids would come that they were looking at from that clinic, they were drawn to Marika. They loved Marika. They wanted to be on her, climb on her. They wanted to be beside her, to watch her, to talk with her. They would come over and ask her questions. And even working with the other physician's assistants or the pharmacy assistants, they were drawn to her too. And she is a caring individual, and she's got such a work ethic and an organizational skill that's going to serve her well. And that was a joy for me to see that, to see somebody coming along and serving in a capacity that she was not yet wanting, but in a field that she would want to go into. You could really see that. So I really enjoyed that part of the mission trip training.
Well, I was gonna say, I kind of went in kind of like a fish out of water. I didn't really know what I was doing. All of the medication was Egyptian. I'm not a doctor. I had no idea what everything was, and Patty was so helpful in teaching me like what medication was for what doses to give, and I felt like I was able to learn a lot, which was a really cool thing because I went in, you know, wanting to serve other people, but I feel like I left the trip feeling really encouraged and learning a lot of knowledge as well from Patty and from the other volunteers and from the people that we served as well.
So it was a very good trip that way. And another highlight was I got to ride a camel. That was great. You know, if you like riding a pony when you're little, a camel when you're older, it's exciting.
It's going to be like a horse, but it is significantly taller.
Shopping in the market, we would have people that could, you know, we'd say like, is this a good deal? Come here, I would like to buy this or to buy that. And we were in the big market kind of all together, and we're looking at some things, and one man said, come here, old lady, look at what I have. But I still bought something from him. So we had a lot of laughs on our trip. We really did enjoy one another. We enjoyed our experiences. Even though some of them I can't believe it.
Yeah.
I have a question for you, Patty, though. There was one of the days at the end of the day, Marika was sent over, and the message I got was, you must be tired because we can't read your writing anymore, so I'll be acting as a scribe. Did you send her over, or did she come over on her own?
Sometimes we go like, what is that? What is that? And she looked,
That's my
I don't know
dad,
what
by
it
the
is.
way.
Yeah.
Classic doctor handwriting, and I
So sometimes we did have to send Marika, like, ask, what does that mean?
Yeah, I also got to kind of shadow a little bit with some of the physicians there. They kind of taught me like all of the physical exams, and they would sort of like talk over with me different diagnoses and treatments, which was also cool for me to learn a bit of the medical, especially in that setting, because I've shadowed physicians in Canada and the US, but not in Egypt in that kind of setting. So yeah, it's pretty cool. And I made some pretty cool friends there. Like just this morning, I got a text from one of them hopefully long-term relationships from just being able to serve.
Very good.
I was one of the luckiest people to look after one of the units because I had my whole family here with me working in the vision clinic. Scott has been with me about 6 times and Michelle 4 or 5 times. So no training involved and they just knew what to do and they did it very well. We served about 560 people in all of the clinics combined. Some of the people came because they couldn't read. They knew how to read, but they couldn't read. Their eye was so bad. So I have to tell you this story. This one lady that I was dealing with started crying. Usually I don't hurt them like they do in the dental, So I said, "What's wrong? Why is she crying?" She said, "Because she told me now I can read my Bible." Wow, that was worth the trip alone. To go there. They had one lady, that might even be the lady, I'm not quite sure. But there was one lady who had so much gratitude that she couldn't stop kissing me. Well, she kissed me on my hand, then she kissed me on the other hand, then on my arm, and then on my other arm, then on my knee, and I had pants on, then on my knee, and then finally kissed me on the top of my head. She probably took up about 5 patients worth of time just giving me kisses. Scott has a picture somewhere in this one of an older gentleman who gave him a kiss. Oh, there, where are you, Scott?
Right in the middle.
Right here. Got your beat, Scott.
Yeah, but did you get prayer beads?
No.
He gave Scott his prayer beads.
Oh, did he?
He was so thankful. He just, after I gave him his glasses, he stood up with this long, elegant speech thanking us for coming and how the community was thankful for us being there. We had a number of people, we would give them glasses, they would leave and then they would come back and they would pronounce a blessing on you and thank you for all that you're doing. I would say of all the countries I've been to, this has been the one where people have come back thankful the most, like express their gratitude the most. And working in vision, it is very rewarding because when someone can't see and you put glasses on, you don't even need your translator. Like when you hit the right pair of glasses, you can tell by the look on their face because, oh, now they can't see, oh, now I can. And you can imagine if you are blind like me and you're walking around with no glasses for years and all of a sudden you have glasses and the whole world is clear, just what a miracle that is. And so it's just so instantly gratifying to be part of this team and to be able to just show Jesus' love in such a small way, but such a huge change to their life.
We took about 1,500 pairs of eyeglasses with us. In case you wonder where do you get all these eyeglasses, well, you know when you go to the optometry shop and you get your new glasses, you leave your old glasses in a box on a shelf, right, on the counter. Once a month, the Lions Club comes and picks up the eyeglasses and ships them out to Calgary, where they're all cleaned, the wings are tightened, they're measured, put in a baggie with the prescription. I call out to Calgary and say, I need 5,000 pairs of eyeglasses for, say, September. Campbell Van Lines, from Ottawa here, delivers them from Calgary to my house free of charge. That's part of their service. So I don't know what we would ever do if we didn't have that resource. Certainly we couldn't buy glasses. We gave out all 60 pairs of sunglasses that we had, which, by the way, if you ever figure out what to do with your old sunglasses, say, oh, I know a guy. We also gave out eye drops to people who were having problems with dry eyes. So the 560 people that we served in that short period of time, Scott gave the right word. It was a reward. You know, for us, it wasn't a trip. It was a venture. A venture to present the gospel, although at this time we were extremely cautious because we weren't going to jeopardize other missionaries who were there by being blatantly irritated of the law. When you don't know what to do, go on a mission trip. Right? Hugh Montgomery, Dr. Montgomery, came on this mission trip and fulfilled a lifelong dream, right? So when I first met him, we don't know each other very long. When I first met him, he said, I only ask God for two things. Help me get over my cancer problem, and number two, let me go on a medical mission trip. God answered his prayer. We have some more materials here that if you want to get some before you go, you can do that. Do you have any questions?
Ben has to talk yet.
Ben's talking.
Ben, your turn.
Yeah, I came on this trip and not knowing exactly what I was going to do. I knew I had to kind of be the chaplain for the trip, and so we kind of went through a devotional that I had made, recounting every time Egypt was mentioned in the Bible and what the story God was telling through each of those mentions. And so we kind of progressed through that, and it was very interesting even to learn the history and see people, and to understand, you know, just the basics of what following Jesus is and what we are called to do. One of the joys of mine being on this trip is, as a pastor, my greatest joy is to watch people live in the center of God's will, and so sort of fan into flames what God wants to do through people, and to see these professionals using their gifts and their abilities to glorify God was just like a joy of mine. And so I'm like tagging along with these people who all kind of had a role and are using their gifts, and I didn't know exactly what I was going to do, because as we got closer, found out that yes, it was illegal to evangelize, and I'm the evangelist, so what am I doing? And I'm not a kids minister, and it seemed like I was doing a lot of kids ministry when I got there. And so my tools were not in any kind of medical way, but these were my tools right here. So got a piece of lint as well. These were my tools, and so there's some beads here, and I'll get to the story of these beads in a second. But you'll see these different kids. This boy, for instance, on previous mission trips, when I've been told that you might have an opportunity just by having white skin, or just by being a foreigner, or for being here in this moment, there might be one chance that you have to share something in someone's life that they will remember for the rest of their life. And so in those moments, I wanted to take the opportunity to speak truth and to speak love and purpose into people's lives. And so, for example, this boy lived in Garbage City, and he really wanted me to go to his house, and I really wanted to go to his house. They particularly sorted plastics, and his dad had a mold where they would melt down these plastics and mold them into plastic coat hangers and then sell the coat hangers. And I wanted to go see the process, but Mama Maggie organization thought that would be too dangerous. It could be a trap. It could be, we didn't know exactly what it was, but for him, the truth that I was speaking to him is about the purpose of God, and that he was convinced that this is generational poverty. He's never going to get out of his situation. There's no plan, there's no life for him, there's nothing beyond that. And so speaking life into him was one thing, but you knew that the affirmation of what you were telling him is that the next day he would come and his brother would come. Or the next day his mom would show up. And they'd already had their procedures done or whatever, maybe a couple of days before. And so you saw like this progression of more and more kids. And Sylvia, she was just an absolute joy and an asset. She was our translator, but more than that, she was a minister of the gospel, and her heart was great. And so what we did is we assembled a group of kids. Oftentimes mothers would be there as well. Sometimes some fathers, they would be listening. We would look to see if they had the tattoo, and that meant we could talk with them. Also, we'd ask them what their names were. If they were Christians, usually their names were Mary or Joseph or anything biblical. And if they were Muslim, they would be Muhammad. They would, anything you could identify pretty quickly. And then we knew if we could tell the story or not. We would tell the story to these group of kids in front of us who were Christians. And I would start with these beads. And simply put, I will just share with you the exact story that we shared. And so we'd have this black bead, and this black bead represents the bad things that you do. And so have any of you done bad things? Yeah, you've done bad things, right? I always say, like, I never taught my kids how to bite one another. I never taught my kids how to be bad. They learned that skill on their own. And so all these kids, I told them that too. Like, your parents didn't teach you this. You do it. And so you do bad things. And all bad things, there's a price to be paid for bad things that we do. And God knew that. And God loved us so much that he sent his, those are the bad things they're following. That he sent his son Jesus to pay the price for the bad things that we do, and that's represented by this red bead. And this red bead is because Jesus died for us, and he died on the cross, and his blood was shed. And this red bead represents his blood. And this is the story that he wants to tell in your life, that your bad things that you do, they can be forgiven. And when they're forgiven, I'd ask them, a lot of them had stained shirts, and I asked them, like, when you get a stain in your shirt, because a lot of you kids do have stains in your shirts, and probably after lunch I'll have a stain on my shirt because I'm a messy eater. But the stains in your shirt, what do you do when you have a stain in the shirt? And most of them were like, my mama cleans it. And I said, yeah, well, you don't want to live with stains on your shirts anymore, and God is the one who cleans your life, and he's the one who makes your life. The first few times I said white as snow, and Sylvia's like, I have no idea what you're talking about. She said, white as cotton. Say white as cotton. And so that he can make your life white as cotton, and that you can live free from the stains in your life. And when you do that, this blue one represents baptism, and you can be baptized into fellowship with God and proclaim what has happened inside outwardly, and you can commit your life to Jesus in an outward way. And the green one represents growth and your relationship with God and growing with him. And then, I hope I didn't lose this last one here. There it is. The last bead was this yellow or gold one. And I said, imagine going to a place where you didn't have to go to the dentist, and you didn't have to go to the doctor, and you didn't have to get medication, and there was no poverty, and there was no pain, and your stomach was never growling, and that is a place that God has made streets not of sand, and there's sand everywhere they were, but streets of gold. And then we would have them all come in, and they would each make a bracelet, and then they would all huddle around, and I would get on my knee, and I'd put my hand, and they'd all put their hands on top of my hand, and then we'd pray the prayer of salvation. And so you saw kids walking around. We did over 2,000 bracelets during that time, and so you see them. A lot of them are wearing them, but other simple joys were just watching these kids who had never used sidewalk chalk, or had never crayons, or bubbles, or just simple pleasures. Just brought them just great joy.
Wait, are you?
And so yeah, you see them walking around, and it was great to be able to have people who are with us to be able to point us and say, this is what you can, this is what you can't say, and it was absolute joy. And so there's lots of pictures I'm sure you've scrolled through, but the greatest joy was sharing the good news of Jesus, but also watching people live out their gifts and living in the center of God's will, and that's I guess that's what I would leave you with, is the encouragement is that you don't have to be a pharmacist or a dentist or a doctor or a hygienist or anything like that. Is you are, God is telling a story in your life, and whatever that story is, you can live that out also here in your workplace, but you can use it for the glory of God in places like this, and serve Him just by how God has wired you. And it's a joy as a pastor to watch people do that.
Ben did such a great job with the bracelets. Ben and Sylvia did such a great job with the bracelets. The kids would often come and see us after they'd gotten their bracelets, and we'd say, "Tell us what your bracelet means. What's all this about?" And they could tell the story. So hopefully they're still wearing those bracelets. So we'd just like to close tonight. I think we probably have 5,000 pictures we could show you. We have 5,000 stories we could tell you. But just want to close with a video that I made of sort of a highlight video of the whole trip. And then we'll hang around for a while after if you have more questions, or if you want to see more pictures, or come and pick up some HTI material, or write Tom a check.
HTI a check.
HTI a check, yes. Thanks for clarifying that. thank you for joining us tonight. We will.
Mimi just has something
Yes.
else to add as well.
I was just gonna say that if anybody would like to donate to Garber City, Mama Maggie's St. Stephen's organization, you can do so and get the Canadian X seat. There is a representative of Mama Maggie in Canada. This would be very helpful because Mama Maggie has branches even in Sudan, Ethiopia, and many countries of the Middle East. So she's expanding the expenses, I think. There is a representative of Mama Maggie. You just Google Mama Maggie, you can find information about donating.
If you'd like our most recent newsletter, we have about 40 copies here, as well as some other literature on HTI. But otherwise, thank you and drive safely home.
Yeah. It was a long time ago. It was in Kotan, right? There's a Mount Russian school.
Yeah, 2 hours down, yeah. And we're no longer quite, close enough, right?
Coming?
Turks from